Hey everyone, and welcome to DePaul University Esports' second career chats. My name is Alex Rodriguez, and today I'm joined with Chris Schneider from Big East Conference. Chris, thanks so much for joining us.
Great, thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me.
All right, so the way this is going to work is I'm just going to ask you a few questions, mostly just about esports, Big East in general, and maybe just about the current situation going on and everything. For everyone watching on Twitch and Facebook, feel free to just drop a comment and we'll see it and we'll try to answer it as soon as we can. So yeah, I think just like that, we can get into it.
Great.
So Chris, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Big East.
Sure. I'm originally from Cincinnati, Ohio, and I grew up a huge baseball fan. I was a diehard Cincinnati Reds fan, and at a young age, just fell in love with professional sports and learned that you could get a degree in sport management at the time. I learned that Bowling Green State University up near Toledo, Ohio, had a sport management program, so that's where I went. Got my undergraduate degree there, and then I went to Ohio State as an intern originally in the ticket office and event management, and was able to get my master's degree from Ohio State in sport management as well. So while I was working as an intern, I fell in love with college athletics, drastically different than the professional game. I love being a part of the college campus environment. And really, I love being a part of the students' experience on campus, not only those student athletes that are competing, but also for those that are fans. You know, it really is part of your collegiate experience that I really enjoy being a part of. So I had a great experience at Ohio State after I got my degree, was there full time for a couple of years. Then I went to the NCAA. I was assistant director of championships for the NCAA for 5 years. I had an opportunity to go back to Ohio State as a sport administrator. So I had oversight of about 10 programs there at Ohio State. And I was there for about 7 years. And then I was watching what was happening in the collegiate landscape, and a lot of conferences were shifting. And in 2013, I jumped on board with the Big East Conference as they were reconfigured. And we started over pretty much from scratch, where we had the Big East brand name. We had an agreement to play basketball at Madison Square Garden, and we built a new office here in Manhattan. And I've been with the Big East since 2013.
Awesome. It's great to see that you kind of like jumped right into your passion early on and kind of continue to pursue that. So kind of moving on from that, where in this path did you like start to be introduced more into esports and kind of start connecting that to Big East or just collegiate competitions as a whole?
Sure. The whole esport experience for me started here at the Big East Conference. I think it was in late 2016 or 2017 when I think we really started to see the big craze of esports really develop. I think professionally, we started seeing everything start to grow. And we started hearing about a lot of colleges that were looking into esport programs. And this really came from our presidents. So the presidents of the Big East Conference, they meet a few times a year. And in one of the meetings, they brought up, this new thing of esports. They didn't know what it was. Didn't know how we could be engaged in it, but it was something that they asked us to look into. And that was really my first opportunity to get involved in esports. So it became one of those other duties as assigned. I ended up on my plate since at the Big East Conference, I'm responsible for the Olympic sports. So I run 15 of our 17 championships in 20 different sports. So it kind of felt natural to add esports into my area. And so we spent a good year just learning about the industry and trying to see how we could make it fit. And we're still learning. We're still trying to figure it out. But that's really how we got started in the Big East.
Yeah, it's definitely a newer thing. It's definitely emerging more and more. And I know you said you had some experience purely with sports before that. When you started getting involved with esports, how did that experience kind of relate to your involvement with sports? Was it like a similar path in terms of stuff, or were there a lot of like new situations that began to emerge?
It's pretty different, to be very honest with you. What I find interesting, and I tell this to a lot of people, is like, I'm not a gamer myself. I do play occasional games, but I also tell people I don't play lacrosse, but I can run a lacrosse championship.
Right.
So I don't think that's a requirement from my perspective. So it's really been interesting to take a look at the culture around gaming. I think gaming is totally different because it's really student driven. It's about student engagement and kind of really growing the gaming community. And that's a little bit different than what we do in the traditional athletic side. In traditional Division I athletics, our institutions have programs, and we want to create great experiences for those specific students, not necessarily grow the sport of basketball on every campus.
Right.
So I think that's one of the differences between traditional sports and esports. The other difference that I learned really is the difference between, or the engagement with game publishers and the different operators that are out there. I try to relate it to, we don't have to go to USA Basketball to get permission to play a basketball game, but you want to make sure that you're in a good relationship with the game publisher. So, for example, we have good relationships with Riot for League of Legends, and so that's a little bit of a different dynamic that we have from traditional sports.
Right, that definitely makes sense. And it's interesting. It's not something I would have really thought about, and how you have to deal with like the game publishers and all those as well, as compared to a regular sport. Now, kind of moving into like 2020 in particular, how has the esports industry and Big East as a whole kind of reshaped with COVID-19? How have they learned to continue on? And do you think esports and traditional sports would handle that differently?
Yeah, I wish I could give you the answer as to how we figured it out. We're still in the process of figuring it out, how traditional sports will continue to operate in the current climate. We're still very much in the midst of the pandemic. So it was in March where we stopped everything that we do. We were actually in the second day of our men's basketball tournament when we shut down all of our traditional sports, and that put a pause on everything. And we immediately shut down our spring sports. But what was really interesting, we had to hit a pause as our entire department, and then we looked at the opportunities to continue engaging with esports programs. And I give a lot of credit to our institutions for that. They really, felt strongly in the ability to provide opportunities for engagement for students, and you can do that differently. Obviously, it's much easier in esports, where you don't have to be, in the same room. You can do it safely, while social distancing. So I do think that there's some really good opportunities for us in the future as we continue to explore. Now, there are other challenges that I think institutions are still facing. Colleges are still trying to figure out exactly how to open up this coming fall. What will classes look like? Will they be hybrids? Will they be versions of online versus in-person classes? And we're still struggling right now with traditional sports on how much we're actually going to be able to play. So I'm spending 90% of my days on conference calls, engaging with other organizations on trying to figure out the best way to run traditional sports, while at the same time continuing to look at those opportunities for esports. Hopefully, we're able to continue moving this fall.
Absolutely. And I definitely understand how esports would kind of be easier to handle in a situation like this, given that it's remote. And it's also just great mentally. I mean, I know for me personally, I wouldn't have been able to handle this quarantine without having esports to watch or something to keep me away from sports. I usually like to watch hockey, but awesome. And I know you stated earlier that, esports is emerging drastically. You're still learning more about it. I'm still learning more about it. I think the whole world is. How would you, this is kind of a hard question to answer, but how would you say you could imagine it being in 5 years? And this could be either as like an entire scale of esports or just within the Big East.
What I'm hopeful, it's hard to say what it's going to look like globally, just because I feel like every year I'm saying it's still the Wild West out there, and it still is, especially at the collegiate side. We're starting to see a little bit more engagement from more institutions. We still haven't seen a lot of movement at the conference office level. I think there are a couple that are really starting to get more involved in it. I think the Mid-American Conference made an announcement recently about really starting to get engaged. The MAAC has been involved in esports, the Mountain West, and a few others. But I think we'll start to see, more conferences get involved. In 5 years, I'm hopeful that with more conferences and more institutions, especially at the Division I level, that become engaged, that we're able to engage in more competitions that look a little bit more like traditional sports. I'd love for us to be able to build up rivalries, kind of across campus that we see in traditional sports. But I also don't want to force esports into the same model that traditional sports is. That's one of the challenges that I think I've seen, is because it's called esports, we want it to fit in this model. Well, there are a lot of challenges that we have in our current existing system for traditional sports that maybe we can use esports to learn some different ways to build our structure. Um, so I think there's definitely a lot of opportunities for growth. We just have to figure out how we want to harness that and make it fit within our institutions.
But absolutely, and it would be awesome to start seeing this like new rivalries and stuff like that we do see in traditional sports and stuff like that. I personally would like to see more representation of esports like on TV, just scrolling through channels and stuff. I think that's like the next big step personally. My next question is, do you have any pieces of advice for DePaul students looking to get involved with the Big East? This could be sports-wise and esports, like always. Just people like looking to maybe learn a little bit more about Big East or get involved themselves.
Sure. The one thing that I always tell anybody who asks me that question, whether it be traditional sports or esports, is take opportunities to volunteer on your campus. Get involved with the programs that you have. And I think as we continue to grow our esports programs, we'll have some more opportunities to engage, each individual, on the campus. I think our goal, and obviously this current pandemic has put a little pause on it, but I think we would like to get to a point where we have regular, in-person competitions. We'd like to be able to grow that. I think that would create some opportunities for more students to get involved. The other area that I think we're going to try to create opportunities for would be in the broadcasting area. Okay, you're talking about wanting to see more on TV. Well, we need to, I think, start educating people and building that workforce that's going to help us put that on.
Absolutely. No, I agree with that. And I think one big step that needs to be taken, and I've noticed this just in the last 5 years, there's been a bunch of developments of this, is kind of separating esports from this idea that it's just like, oh, it's just playing games, it's just like fun. Like there really is a competitive side to it. And I think once that becomes like a common knowledge, I feel like that's kind of the next big step to take.
Yeah, I agree. It was interesting for me, as I was learning about this. Again, I was going in with blinders on because I didn't know what I was walking into. I had a chance to go out to the Collegiate League of Legends Championship out in LA, and when I walked into there, I said it had a lot of the same components that our traditional sports have. There was a stadium, there were fans, there were people that bought tickets, they had concessions, they had merchandise, they have people cheering, they have coaches. I was like, to me, all that lines up with traditional sports. So it has a lot of the same component. It's just different for people that aren't gamers to kind of understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think like, especially looking at like younger generations, I think that's becoming more and more common knowledge as we move forward. That's honestly most of the questions I had for you today. I was wondering maybe if you could just give us some last information on Big East where we can reach you guys. And I also just wanted to remind everyone, if you guys have any questions for me or Chris, feel free to leave a comment and we'll try to get to this before we end this up.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want more information, you can find some information on bigeast.com, and we are continuing to add more information as we expand our esports pages on our main athletics webpage.
Awesome. And just as one last note, just while I'm waiting to see if anyone has any questions, I know you said you play a few games earlier. What would you say is your favorite game to play?
We do have an Xbox, and I got sucked into the Assassin's Creed series. So
Those are great.
I just get stuck in, but then I don't play regularly, so I get frustrated and forget how the controls work. And I was much better. I was much better on the Atari.
I understand that. I used to love Brotherhood with like walking around ancient Rome, I believe, and it was just amazing. Cool. Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions, so I think we're good. No, we can go ahead and wrap this up. But Chris, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for answering all my questions. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for watching this. I hope you guys got some insight. Oh, we actually do have one question that just came in. The question is from Profi Lactique. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Do you think that the esports industry has potential for becoming a top 3 sport in America in terms of viewers/supporters within the next 10 to 15 years?
I think that's an interesting question. I think when you look at trying to put a time frame on anything, it's pretty difficult. But yeah, I don't see why not. I think it's going to take some time as we continue to build, the growth at the collegiate level. But the professional side, I think you're definitely seeing a lot of growth there. So I think, yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And what I'm curious to see is, we have all these traditions, like there's Super Bowl, there's like, Thanksgiving football, stuff like that. I'm curious to see what will happen moving forward, if something like that would happen for esports ever down the line.
Yeah, I think you have to look at it in terms of generations and players, and I think the more players that continue to to age, and because TV and sports sponsorship is about certain age brackets, and so I think the more people that become lifelong gamers, the more likelihood you're going to be able to see it on television.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for the comment, for the question. Really appreciate it, Profi. That's about everything. I think we can probably go ahead and wrap things up. Maybe just wait a second more, see if we get any other comments, but I think that's going to be everything. But yeah, again, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching this. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. All right, take it easy.
See ya.
See ya.